This finds everybody well, um, all things considered. I can't remember when we were learning last time how intense the construction was outside, but if you've missed it, it's back. So if there's background noise, I apologize. So today we're going to learn. It's good to see everybody. The format I think is going to continue. We're going to go from 2:30 to about 2:55 ish. And we're going to continue where we left off, which is the beginning of the fourth chapter of Pirkei Avos. We're going to also learn today in the memory of Devorah, who passed away last night, and so today's learning will be dedicated for her. And the funeral is Wednesday morning. I think at 10 o'clock. There was an email that was sent out to everybody. So. All right, so let's get started with the Mishnah. And again, it's good to see people. So we'll start here. So in the fourth chapter, and Ben Zoma is at the same time as Ben Azai, at the same time as Rabbi Akiva. He's one of the four rabbis who enters into what the Talmud calls the Pardes. He doesn't survive it in that he dies young. Ben Azai also dies young. That's one of the reasons why they're not called by their first name. Their first name was actually both Shimon. Ben Azai, the mystics have him as a reincarnation of Shimon, and so of Shammai. It's not for today, but he dies young. But he brings tremendous teaching and wisdom to this. So Ben Zomer says, Ezehu Chacham, who's a wise person? He answers, Haloi Meid Mikol Adam. So we're just going to make some observations. We're going to go through. We'll then discuss. But who's a wise person? Is someone who learns from everybody. So the obvious question is, is there really what to learn from everybody? There's probably a lot of people we shouldn't learn from. It's one thing to learn from smart people, but the idea that I should learn from somebody who's, perhaps not so educated, maybe that's a bad idea. Shenemar mikol melamde his kalti ki eid oisecha sichali, and this is a verse from Tehillim 119. Who from all who taught me, I have gained understanding. So it's an interesting proof text, because here it says you're supposed to learn from everybody, and here it says for all who taught me. Well, not everybody taught you something, so it's a little bit of a weaker proof text and needs an explanation. He continues, Ezu Gibor, who's a strong person, Hakovesh et Yitzray, so one who subdues their evil inclination. And again, what's interesting here is that it's possessive. It's not one who conquers the evil inclination, but rather it's person specific, one who conquers their inclination. That's what makes somebody mighty and strong. Shenemar, and this is from Proverbs, Tov erech apayim, migibor shel beruchai meloiched ir. Who is mighty? The one who subdues their evil inclinations. It says that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that rules their spirit than they who takes a city. Okay. It's an interesting text. So he continues, Ashrecha, they are happy. Sorry. Ashrecha b'olam hazeh v'tov lach l'olam haba, right? That they're happy in this world, and it's good for them in the next world. Ezehu mechubad, who is honorable. Hamachaved es habrius, one who is honored, who honors creations, people. Brios is like the broadest category of people. It doesn't mean Jews or non-Jews, it means creations, very broad. Shenemar, also, this is a tricky proof text, but I think it's deeply insightful. So who is honorable? The one who honors others. Shenemar, that it says, and this is from the prophet Shmuel, Ki mechabdai achab beid uvaizai yekalu. Right, who's what they translate as, this is God speaking. I honor those who honor me, but those who spurn me shall be dishonored. So again, it's saying Ezehu Mechubad, who's someone who's honorable, one who honors creations. How do you know? Because God says, whoever honors me, I will honor. What does it have to do with honoring creations? So it needs an explanation of how this proof text supports the proof, but it's a deep teaching. Okay, I want to stop sharing and hear what people have to say. Any questions on the Mishnah, and then we'll go back and try to say some more intelligent things. Any? Yes, please, Susan. Just unmute yourself and.
My copy says, and I've always been taught this by different rabbis, who is rich, he who rejoices in his portion, as it is said in the Psalm, in the Psalm. And, I used to think that made a lot of sense. But now that I'm so much more aware of so many people living with nothing and so frightened, that really bothers me now, that we're supposed to be thinking that. And I need some edification or something, because it's a lot easier for some of us than for some other people. And I know that God does not think less of any of those other people.
First of all, your question's a great question. It's a great question. So in some ways, this is responding to the Gemara's perspective that a person only dies with half of what they want. And it doesn't make a difference how much you have. You have $100, you want $200. You have $100 million, you want $200 million. So who's really wealthy, right? Because there are people who have billions of dollars who are anxious about their money. I know somebody who literally makes over their contract's over $100 million. And they're the most anxious about money I've ever met. What's going to be? They have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. And what's going to be? If I have $100 in the bank, I'm happy. I'm happy because it's positive, it's not negative. So I think on some level, what it means is that wealth will never be determined by the figure in your bank account. That's not where you look to determine how wealthy you are. Where you look to determine you're wealthy, do you have what you need? Do you have what you need? Not that you don't have to care about the person who's less. That makes you selfish, right? That makes you a bad person if you only care about yourself and not other people. But here we're just trying to determine who's wealthy. What does it mean to be wealthy? Don't think of wealth in relationship to other people. It's actually counterproductive, because if your next door neighbor has a brand new car, right, and now then you need to have two brand new cars, right? So then the wealth is going to be determined by the standards set by others. So here, I think it's coming to find the definition that exists independent of society. What does it mean to be wealthy? To be happy with what you have. And it's not to say that I have enough of what I have, because it could be that I don't have enough. Maybe I don't have enough, but there are people who don't have enough, but for them, they feel so blessed. I have a place to live. Okay, so I don't have next month's rent. I have this month's rent, right? Whatever it is, when a person feels that what I have is good, to say this differently, or to give a different proof, there's a really interesting dispute between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai in the Gemara, whether or not it was good for the world to be created. Maybe it was better the world shouldn't have been created. For 2.5 years, they're fighting. Is it better to be created, not better to be created? And they get to a point where they say, you know what? Beis Hillel says, I agree with you, Beis Shammai, better not to have been created. But we're here now, so now what? So better that we weren't created, but now that we're here, we should make the best of it. Person should examine their deeds. So the commentators ask, how can you have a question of whether or not it was good to be created or not? God is good. God created this world, right? So it's axiomatic that it's good. How can we think that what God did was bad? So that's a certain perspective. It's a certain perspective. So if a person feels like if God wanted me to have any more than I would have right now, I would have it. It must be that this is exactly what God wants. I'm being taken care of by God. God is sustaining me. God is taking care of me. Any more would be excessive. Any more would be a waste. Any more would be against the divine will. Okay, that's not necessarily how we function. But there's such a worldview that's aspirational, because if a person really feels that, so then it's not, you have as much money as it's possible to have. Can you imagine being in a place you couldn't have any more money? There's no more money for you to have. So, okay, that doesn't necessarily pay the bills, right? But in terms of feeling that sensation of being, so I think your question's a great question, but I think here in this mission, it's a function of definitions. So what does it mean to be wealthy? Who's wealthy? Someone who feels like they have all that they need. right? That they're happy with that. I'm happy that I have this struggle and not that struggle, right? There's a famous Hasidic Rebbe at some point made the observation. In Yiddish, a package is like a pekala. So each one of us has our own. In English, we maybe say baggage, right? We each have our own stuff. But if you'd be brought into a room where you got to see everybody else's stuff, everybody would choose their own stuff. Nobody wants anybody else's stuff. So, okay, Baruch Hashem, this is my stuff. I'm happy that I have this set of struggles as opposed to another. And it fits thematically in the Mishnah here, that when we think about what does it mean to conquer the evil inclination, the truth is there isn't an evil inclination. Each one of us has our own, and each one of us has our own for the moment, and it will shift from moment to moment and day to day. So who's a strong person? It's not how much weight you can bench press. It's not how far you can run. It's not how much pain you can endure. But do you have like the wherewithal to dig internally and do the work to overcome that voice of opposition internally? You're a unique voice, right? So there also, it's a definition of what does it mean to be strong. That definition of strong has nothing to do with the people next to you. It doesn't make a difference how strong physically people are, or how strong people are emotionally, or strong, economically, or even spiritually. The definition is for the individual. What does it mean to be strong? Yeah, can you exert that effort? Yeah, Doug.
But it seems to me you're playing into the hands of the Marxists who are saying that, religion is the opiate of the people, and so we should all be satisfied with what we have and not struggle.
Oh, this struggle's real. This struggle, perhaps there's no bigger struggle. And that's the idea of who is strong, the person who can overcome this evil inclination. So let me tell you, it's a great question, but the deck is stacked against us, because unlike when you go to the gym or you pick up a weight, that weight weighs the same amount every day. It doesn't change. As you get stronger, it gets subjectively lighter. It's easier to lift up. The evil inclination, it's person specific, moment specific, and as you grow, it grows. Maybe we've discussed this, but Rav Dessler describes it, as a U. We'll just draw this out. It's a U. Wherever you are, the evil inclination is. So you don't put in any effort, it doesn't need to put in any effort. You put in more effort, it puts in more effort. Because it always needs to be a fair fight. Meaning, if we think of the evil inclination as being not existing independent of God, but as a messenger of God, meaning an angel, like the angel of death, like all sorts of angels that happen to pick bad jobs or been given bad jobs. Their one goal is to make it difficult for us, but just so difficult that if we really focus, if we really put in the effort, if we really prioritize, we can overcome. The Yetzer Hara wants to be defeated. The evil inclination wants us to say no to it. But if we're not tested, then we don't get to grow. So this is absolutely about understanding the struggle and how permanent that struggle is. I was speaking this morning to somebody at Hartman. They're struggling. They're a poll watcher, and they're in Florida, and they were the only non-person of color at this thing. And they walked in. They just felt it was awkward. They were not equipped for all of the things. And in the conversation, I said, one of the things that's so difficult in the universe right now is that there's no end date of when does the struggle end? Like, is it going to be over tomorrow? It might be, but it might not be, right? So when we think about, okay, I have to walk 1 more mile. The dentist is going to be over in 30 more seconds, right? Like when when it's going to end, so you can say, okay, I'm just going to dig deep. I'm going to push through and I'm going to get to the other side. But the evil inclination, it doesn't let up. It doesn't give us a day off. It perhaps gives us 1 day off. I know that you have a question, but the numerical value of the word Satan is 364, I believe. And the idea is that 1 day out of the year, it takes a day off, and that's Yom Kippur. We have a tradition of it's Rosh Hashanah, maybe. It's Rosh Hashanah. I didn't sleep last night, but we try to trick them to sleep in. So the Yetzer Hara, for the most part, it's a full-time job, 24/7. So when today we overcome, the Yetzer Hara just comes back stronger tomorrow. So I think what the Mishnah here is saying is like, if you can get a moment where you feel like you defeated it. I was going to go to synagogue and it's too cold outside in the time when you can go. Okay, I'm going to go. Whatever the struggle is. So, understand that there's going to be a new fight in the morning. Yeah. Another question. Yeah, please.
I just have a comment and a question. I came in a little late, but could we just say that, in terms of Mia Shira Sameach Bechelko, that it doesn't necessarily have to be, monetary riches. It can be, and then to me, kind of makes
we spoke about that.
Sense,
Yeah. When we think about, what is a person thankful for? Their health, right? Their family, maybe their job, maybe their ability to paint, whatever the thing is. What a person is grateful for, their portion, that that they wouldn't trade that with anybody. It's a great indicator. Saul.
So you made a comment about learning from all people, but the truth is, of course, we can learn from people that we don't think are good, because it sometimes just supports our view of what is right in the world, and what this other person is doing that we think is not right is to say, yes, what that person is doing is not right. I also learned someplace else, if we didn't have the Yetzer Hara, we wouldn't have creativity.
That's right.
No one would build a house. There would be no children. There would be nothing. So you can't subdue it all the time, because otherwise, what would there be in the world?
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a Gemara. I think it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says that at some point, maybe it was the Anshe Knesset Gedela, but the members of the Great Assembly, they davened that there shouldn't be Yetzer Hara anymore in the world. They were like, what do we need this for already? Let's just be done with it. Let's I think the language is, we'll banish it or we'll slaughter it, something like some sort of permanent eradication. And like in the morning, it says like there were no eggs to be found from the chickens. Like everything stopped producing. It just was, nobody was motivated, because it comes from that place of. So then the Gemara says that so they brought it back, but they pierced its eye, like it weakened it. But you're right, meaning there needs to be the drive, and this is like very deep in the Jewish tradition, that the drive is never bad. Passion is never bad. It's the raw material, it's the energy. You have to channel it for something good as opposed to bad. And that's the idea of the you. Like it could go this way, it could go that way. In fact, the language of bracha is a language of bricha, of like bending or channeling, right? We want to divert it, right? That's the idea of one mitzvah leads to another. We want to have this flow going in the right direction. But just in terms of going back to your first point and the beginning of this Mishnah, the word chacham, when we think about it, particularly to the Hebrew, but when we think about someone who's wise, it's like somebody who's a painter, right? They're able to paint. Someone who's wise is actually able to collect wisdom. And so somebody so there are two, I think, really important pieces here. The first one is that when we think about a chacham, there can be negative data out there that supports our point of view. That's not necessarily new information. However, when we see somebody doing something and saying, oh my gosh, that is grotesque, that is unappealing, I don't want to ever be that. How did that person get to be that person, right? Not to be too political, but I was watching Obama talk about another person who maybe didn't get invited to somebody's birthday party, or they had a birthday party and nobody showed up, right? So it could be people are the way they are for good reasons. But when we think about how do people end up, when we see somebody who is, let's say, narcissistic, for example, so that can be a mirror to us, that we can learn from that in terms of the negative of what not to do, to try to actually evolve, right? To reinforce, that's gross, don't do that, right? That's easy. You go outside, you see people, they're not wearing a mask. Okay, but I'm not learning something new, I'm labeling, I'm saying, Nebuch, this person, So the question becomes, how is it that a person is able to kind of open themselves up, that there's actually something to be gathered from the other? So one of the interpretations over here is that this is actually an indicator of a person's humility. If a person's able to listen to somebody, a child is talking, so of course, we want to educate a child that they have a voice that they should be listened to, and so we listen to them. But when we listen, it's it's cute, oh, that's really sweet, right? But we're not actually engaging, you're going to tell me something, what could you possibly teach me? So the wise person is able to say, no, this is coming from a place of purity. This is coming from a place that hasn't been jaded from the universe yet. There's something here that I can learn from. And for a person to be open to that, you have to be humble, because we see people, we feel like this person's going to teach me something. This person's going to tell me something I don't really know. So that's the idea here, right? Of the emphasis on from everybody, right? It's one thing. It's person goes to a class, you're learning from the teacher who knows more, right? In theory, right? A person wants to learn Sanskrit or something. So you go to a class, the teacher is an expert in something. And so, okay, so you can learn from a professor. But the chiddush here, the novelty is that you can actually learn from somebody who never went to school because they've been through the study hall of life. I know there's a couple of other hands up here. Robin.
So I listened to this podcast. It's what Trump can teach us about constitutional law. And it's amazing how much I've learned from this podcast.
There you go.
And yeah, so I think to some extent that speaks to the first part of it, that we have the opportunity to learn from everyone, unless our emotions get in the way. Well, that's for me. I should speak for myself. And then I'm just shut down and I don't learn anything. So a big part of what I'm hearing here is to be open and aware and accepting, but also and to feel both satisfied with who you are and what you have, but also to be always engaged in the struggle. So it's both things at once.
Yeah, that's a great, right? In other words, right? So who's a person who's happy, right? Who's a person who's wealthy, right? But as a rule, like if I look at what I have today, it's the same thing as yesterday. I'm not happy. Like I need something, like that's as a rule, like it's not enough. Right? When we think about physical things, like I experienced that already. I saw that already, right? You saw a movie. Okay, I'll see it a second time. But if that's the only movie you're going to see forever, it's not fulfilling anymore. So you see something new. So the question is like, yes, how can we be present in the moment, being happy and also not complacent, right? That we shouldn't become just have apathy, like, okay, like it is what it is. This is my chelik. What am I supposed to do? Like, this is my portion. No. That it's meant to motivate us. Ben, I see that your hand's up. I want to say one last thing quickly for the end piece before we run out of time, and then Ben, I'll hear your question. Love to hear your question. This proof text at the end, it's powerful. What does it mean? Who's honorable? The one who honors other people. And the proof text is that from God, whoever honors me, right, I shall honor, right? So it doesn't really fit as a proof text. And I think I remember seeing years ago from Chaim Volozhin that he says, no. Why is it that we honor people? We honor people because they're God's creations, right? When we talk about kavod habrius, the honor of creations, it's the fact that you're created by God. So what the proof text is actually perfect. That who is honorable? The one who honors other people. Because God says, whoever honors me, I will honor. So how do we honor God? We honor God by honoring God's creations. It's kind of a play on words. Because the brios is somebody who's created, but it's not, they weren't created from nothing, they were created from God. So the proof text is actually really exacting that who's honorable, the one who honors other people, right, other creations. And the proof text is, because God says, if you honor me, meaning by giving dignity and honor and humanity to people, the ones that I've created, then you're worthy of honor, so I'll honor you. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this teaching just reminds me of so many other teachings and so many other classes. And it's, to me, this is kind of saying, are you listening to all of the other teachings? Are you hearing this? This is what you're supposed to do. Love your neighbor, repair the world, add to holiness, strive to be righteous, and appreciate what God has given you, okay? So we've heard this many times before, but I like the setup. The setup is very ironic. Who is strong? You think it's going to be the person who could lift 300 pounds. They're very strong. No, that's not the person who's strong. The person who's strong who could resist the inclination, the evil inclination. Then I just wanted to quickly say, don't forget the expression out of the mouths of babes. So this is, we learn from people who are innocent because they have that different perspective. And then finally, I was going to say, is it better to be created or not? We are created with judgment. So if we were not created with judgment, we wouldn't know whether it's better or not. What difference would it make? So of course it's better to be created.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, that there's an aspect of wisdom, that teaches that we're able to know. There's a great Rav Gedalia Shor, who's the Meshkiach of Torah V'das, and on this we'll end. There's a verse in Tehillim, I think it's like Kuf Yud Tes, 119. In chapter 119, the verse says, "V'chacham lo mavin or lo yada as zois." That the uksil lo yavin as zois. I think is the verse that the fool doesn't understand this. So the context of this is much broader. But what he says is, no. For the seal, when they don't understand something, okay, this I don't understand, but everything else I do understand. And when it comes to the wise person, they feel like they understood something, right? Like I have a small little new bookshelf on wheels, and I put it together. It wasn't simple. The instructions were bad. But once I figured it out, I was like, oh, I figured it out. I get it. So the wise person should say, Yavin Azois, like this I understood. But if there was a new bookshelf, there's no chance I would understand it. Meaning, when we think about what do we really know, what don't we really know. So the fool says when they're faced with their own ignorance or lack of erudition, they want to say, okay, so this I don't know. But everything else I assume I know. The wise person is just the opposite. Even if they get to a place of understanding of something, so okay, so this I understand, but this is not even a drop in the ocean of all the other things that are out there in the universe. So part of it is really a function of perspective and humility. So yeah, of course we know what we know, but that doesn't. If anything, the more that we know, the better we've developed the muscles to be able to learn more. So it's meant to motivate us and also to keep that kind of humility. Friends, it's great to be back again. And we will, God willing, continue. We're going to stop somewhere between 2:55 and 3 o'clock. It's not a hard 2:55. It is a hard 3 o'clock because of another class. But we're going to shoot between 25 and 30 minutes, and we're going to just do one mission a day. And it's great to see everybody. So stay safe. And we will, tomorrow is election day. I'm happy to meet if people want to meet, or not meet if people don't want to meet. Yes, meet? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll be here. I already voted. So
So did
everyone
we.
else should vote. So if you haven't voted, okay. Fantastic, friends. See you tomorrow. Take care.
Karen, is your mother okay? Is your mother